So, Mr. Chairman, once you get this meeting started, I do want to speak and ask questions regarding 21521. If I'm around.
Okay. And if we're still in the administrative phase of this, I don't see Clerk LeBlanc's item on here. Are we just adding it, or how would you like to handle that?
Her
Oh,
item,
correction, 199.21. I stand corrected, as you were. It's been a long day. It's been a long week. All right, we are ready to go. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the September 29th meeting of the Budget and Finance Committee of the Lawrence City Council. My name is Dave Abdu. I am your chairman this evening, and I am joined by my colleagues from District D, Councilor Giovanni Rodriguez, at large, Anna Levy, with that, I will move on to the legal business. And under COVID, we're obviously meeting virtually, and I'm required to read some legal stuff. Pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 21, this meeting of the Budget and Finance Committee is being conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for by this order. A reminder that persons who would like to listen or view this meeting while in progress may do so at the following locations, and it stipulates the URL for the City of Lawrence City Council landing page on the website, as well as the Lawrence City Council Facebook and YouTube pages. With that, I would ask for a moment of silence for both of the Marines that we buried over the last 2 weeks. Thank you. With that, I would ask that we say the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. Good evening. And the first item is item number 19521, the acceptance of funds up to $5,000, Mass Chiefs of Police, as presented to us by Eileen Burnell, LPD Director of Support Services. Ms. Burnell is here with us this evening. I would ask the counselor to please identify herself, give her name and address for the record, and tell us why we're here.
Thank you, Counselor. Yeah, Eileen Burnell, 257 Mount Vernon Street, with the police department, and here on behalf of the department regarding funding that was awarded to the department through the Mass Chiefs of Police, which is not a state agency. The specific grant is in the amount of $5,000. It's in recognition of the work that's already been done by the department towards the opioid crisis, and is additional funds to allow them to continue work towards the opioid crisis. So it can really be used for any use as long as it directly relates to the opioid crisis. So it could be for the payment of equipment, it could be payment for a cleanup, it could be overtime, but it has to just directly relate to the opioid crisis. And we have a lot of expenses that relate directly to that. So we'll definitely put that money to direct and good use.
Thank you. I appreciate it, as do we all. I would also note that we are joined by at-large City Councilor Pavel Payano. I do not have any questions at this time. I would ask my colleagues if there are questions. I see Mr. Rodriguez's hand. Councilor Rodriguez. Councilor Rodriguez, you are muted.
Thank you for reminding me. I have a quick question in regard to the organization that actually award those $5,000 to the city, is the Mass Chief of Police. Can you tell me a little more as of who they are, if they are chief association. They are not an organization that is government organization you just mentioned. So who that organization is?
It is exactly what you described it as, Counselor. It is exactly, it is the chiefs of police that they, the chiefs of police for the state have a professional organization, and that organization has recognized the work that Lawrence has done, and they collectively had nominated Lawrence to receive these funds. So it's coming from the chiefs.
All right, no more questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Are there any other counselors that wish to speak on this matter or have questions for Ms. Burnell? I would note, I cannot see everybody, so let me just scroll across. Seeing none, I'll entertain any motions that counselors may have at this time.
Motion to send it to the full council with a favorable recommendation.
Second.
There's a motion by Counselor Rodriguez. It's been seconded by Counselor Payano. Is there discussion? Hearing none, I would ask that our clerk this evening, Maria Halloran, take the roll.
Okay, roll call for document 19521. Councilor Pavel Payano,
Yes.
Councilor Anna Levy,
Yes.
Councilor Giovanni Rodriguez,
Yes.
and Chairman David Abdu.
And the chair votes yes. The motion passes.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Ms. Burnell. We will take this up on Tuesday.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome. And let's see, I believe you are here for the next item as well. The next item is item number 196, acceptance of funds up to $20,000 relating to the 2021 naloxone grant as presented by Eileen Burnell, LPD Director of Support Services. Once again, welcome back, Ms. Burnell.
Thank you. The police department receives funds annually. We apply for and then receive funds relating to Narcan. The state gives us an incremental amount. That's why I put up to the 20,000. Initially, we will receive $4,000 to $5,000, and we spend that. Then they'll give us another $4,000 to $5,000 throughout the fiscal year. We do use that to buy Narcan and Narcan-related items. That grant would pay for things such as gloves, bags, wipes, things that the officers would need to deal safely with Narcan, as well as their exposure to the drugs, the opioids that would be causing a Narcan-needed reaction. So basically, we buy all the Narcan for the city, so we buy it for the police department and the fire department as well. So accepting this grant allows us to buy the first batch of Narcan for this year, and then when we spend that money, we will buy the next few batches. Usually we buy more like $8,000 to $12,000 worth of Narcan a year, but it could be as high as 20,000 is what the state will allow us to on a reimbursement basis.
Very good. And my only question is, this looks familiar. As I recall, we had a similar grant last year, correct?
It's annual. Yes, Counselor, it's annual.
Thank you. Appreciate it. I have no further questions or comments. Are there questions or comments by colleagues? Councilor Rodriguez.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak on this item. So every year we've been having this grant to allow us to use Narcans and essentially help out with the opioid crisis. At the beginning, 6 years ago, when I have this item in front of me, I was not in favor of it. I voted against it because of a situation that it was very difficult for me to understand how the manufacturer, the manufacturer that produce opioid, and they were producing most of the opioid crisis and the overdose, they create this product to reduce the overdose. As of right now, I'm being, for the last 3 or 4 times, I've been voting yes to accept the funds to allow the police department to, and the fire department to have these two And now I just want to make sure that we clear with the public as of, who are the manufacturer of this product. And if that's still the same situation, which are basically 3 of the 4 major manufacturers of opioid are the one also manufacturing Narcans, is that's the same case.
Counselor, we don't select the manufacturer. We buy
No.
the Narcan through Department of Public Health. So whoever is applying, but I understand exactly your point, and I think it's really valid. I do believe exactly what you're saying, that the same drug manufacturers that make Narcan are the same ones that make oxycodone and other addictive opioids that people overdose on. So they had to create the second product to revive people, but Narcan saves lives when our officers are out there, when our firefighters are out there, and they're having that crisis in front of them. We want them to have this tool so that they can respond appropriately and help the public to the best of their ability with every tool that they have. So we buy the Narcan from the state. We buy it through the Department of Public Health, the Public Health Hospital in Tewksbury. So I don't know which manufacturer they provide us with. I understand the question.
No, I understand that, but we probably don't know the manufacturers, but the fact is that 3 of the major producer of Narcans are the same as the one that produce a drug that make the addiction.
Yeah.
So
No, you're
I
right.
just want to make sure that everybody's aware up there that this product is needed, but we really don't want it, because by having it, or at least on my end, by having it means that we're gonna have to keep on, people are gonna keep on using drugs, and at the end, we don't want people to use drugs up there. But we understand the need of it, which is saving life. And it is complicated. At the end of the day, I gonna vote yes on it, but I have conflicting thought as of why we need it. And I definitely understand that save life, but it is difficult to keep on giving money to the same manufacturer that produce the drugs, because it's a product, it's a business. We don't see it as a business, we see it as people's life, but they keep on producing the drugs that is killing people and keep on producing the drug that actually keep them alive, to keep on having more business and more business and more business and more money. So the greed of a lot of companies that are doing this is to the top. And yes, I'm voting in favor of this, because at the end of the day, we have no tools whatsoever that can help to save life at this actual tool actually, do the right thing, which is keeping people alive. Just want to put it up there because it's a very conflicting situation every time that I have to vote for this.
Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez. I see Council Payano's hand is up. Council Payano, floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to concur with my colleague, Councilor Rodriguez, frustration that essentially that these companies are essentially getting away with a lot of the harm that they have caused our communities and communities across this country. I think it's important, though, to note that Narcan itself is not the cause of the addiction. It's what keeps the person alive, right? With the hopes that as long as the person's alive, as long as the person's fighting, that the opportunity of this person not being in their addiction and becoming a productive member of society. I think that there have been times, I'll say that I think that we as a city could have done more to sort of, touch on some of these issues. Like I think about the movement family, that organization of youth that was out there, essentially trying to help individuals that were addicted and trying to get them to find a new lease in life. And I think with our interactions with that group to me, wasn't the best. I think there was a lot more that we could have done, and it could have been an opportunity for us to essentially connect in a different way on top of the other things that our city is doing to help those individuals that are still our constituents, right? Our constituents are not just the voters. Everyone who's struggling, whether they pay attention, watch us on Facebook or television or read the news, are still our constituents, and we have to make sure that we are doing everything and anything we can for them. In addition, Councilor Rodriguez, as you spoke about your frustrations with those companies, what I thought about was that a couple of years ago, you and I attempted to have the city sign on to a lawsuit against these companies, and unfortunately, that didn't go too well. But I think that in itself would have been another attempt, another opportunity for us to touch on this issue, except that would have been more direct to the makers of this drug and finding ways to bring more resources to a city to address that. That being said, I think it was just important to add some more context to this motion. And I'll say that, as unfortunate as it is that we have to essentially support this, we're doing it because if not, people would die. So I commend our first responders, and I think about not just the fact that they're out there saving lives, but that they're dealing with this every day, seeing the dark part of our society, and coming in the next day feeling like I'm going to save a life instead of giving up. So thank you to LPD for continually to bring this up and advocate for this. No further questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Council Payano. Other questions, concerns, comments? Hearing none, I will call the vote.
Motion. Oh, Matt.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Thank you, Mr. Payano.
Motion is sent to the full council with favor recommendation.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you, Council Rodriguez. Motion's been made by Council Payano. It's been seconded by Council Rodriguez. Is there any discussion? I thought we were in the middle of discussion. I lost track of the meeting. My apologies. With that, I will now ask Clerk Halloran to please call the vote, to tally the vote.
Okay, roll call for document 19621. Councilor Giovanni Rodriguez,
I vote yes.
Councilor Pavel Payano,
Yes.
Councilor Anna Levy,
Yes.
and Chairman David Abdu.
Chair votes yes. Motion passes 4-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, councils.
You're welcome. And I think we'll see you again at the end of the meeting. All right, the next item is item number 19921, approval of additional funding transfers for November 2nd, 2021 municipal election as presented by our city clerk, Diane P. LeBlanc. I see that our city clerk is here with us this evening. I turn the floor over to her.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, members of the committee, for allowing me to be here tonight. When I got on the council docket, it was simply to sort of save a space and have something come to committee. I didn't know what the detail of my request would be at that time, but I also didn't want to wait until I had that information and then be forced to come before you and ask for you to deal with something as an emergency situation. So this morning, actually, when I came into the office and said, I need to focus on what this request is going to look like. Am I going to be asking this committee to do fund transfers, or am I just going to be going to the mayor and asking the mayor for a supplemental appropriation to come in on the October 5th meeting and then go through the process and, not get approved till the 19th? I didn't know what it was going to look like. I know that Mr. Ianello is listening. He was tied up in meetings all day today. So I began to look at our budget numbers. I worked in the Munis system, kind of looking around to say, okay, where do we stand in various categories, and what do we need? And I at one point thought that I was going to just go in and meet the mayor and ask for supplemental appropriation. However, when I went in and I looked at our elections division salaries and wages temporary, there was an additional sum of $31,000 in there that wasn't there before. And it was like Christmas. And it, I thought that it was a mistake. Again, I reached out to Mr. Ianello. He was tied up in very important meetings. But thank goodness for our amazing comptroller, who gave me time this afternoon and sat down with me and confirmed that this was in fact real money belonging to the elections division. I think it may have been from a prior year. I don't know why it just made it into the budget, but it's real. It's to be used by the elections division. And what it meant was that I didn't have a need to go to the mayor and ask for supplemental appropriation. That said, I still needed to come to you because you all need to approve transfers. And where the money is not where we need the money. You know that for the preliminary election, we had the benefit of some additional help from other communities in the office. Some of it we paid for, some of it the state paid for. That was very helpful to us. It's a conversation for another day. You may or may not be aware that I also needed to send one of our clerks from upstairs in the clerk's office to downstairs in the clerk's office, just to assist with the processing of requests for early voting ballots and requests for absentee ballots, because it is incumbent upon us to get these items to the voters as quickly as possible. I've learned an awful lot about the Lawrence Postal Service during this time, and it's kind of hit or miss where you mail something in Lawrence, whether it gets processed through the Lawrence post office or whether it goes to Boston to be processed. Of the ballots that came into us that were actually received after 8 p.m. on election night that could not be counted, they were received the next day and a few days later. Most of them went through Boston. One of them even went through California. So my point is, we need to have hands on board that we can process every request the same day, right? My plan was, and I went to the HR department and I said, we need to bring on 2 temporary employees for this 5-week period. And what came back to me from our acting HR director was that it was the suggestion of Mr. Ianello that probably wouldn't work for us, simply because the hiring process would take too long, that we should in fact use a temporary agency. So that is what we're going to do. We are going through the contracting process, but again, using a temporary agency for temporary help, the funds don't come out of salaries and wages temporary. The funds have to come out of other purchase services. So that really explains the bulk of the first transfer I'm asking for. The other transfers we're making to operating supplies, printing and mailing, and office supplies. These are areas, certainly operating supplies and office supplies, that were really bare bones. I mean, I literally had one of our staff members come upstairs looking for a pad of paper, and we didn't have any paper. I gave her a pad of paper out of the supplies that I bought for myself at Staples. On election day, we ran out of toner in our printer. And because of the expense, they didn't have spare toner on hand. Toner, printing labels, You probably saw when you were out on the election trail, the campaign trail, that there were sandwich boards out. There was signage that you have not used before. That all costs money. So these other areas where I'm trying to replenish are areas where we've pretty much depleted by spending the funds that we needed to just get through the preliminary. And we need to do more of those things. I want to talk also about the transfer into printing and mailing, because that was probably one of the best funded areas in our budget, initially starting at $25,000. But that went down by 4,000 because we had to do a transfer to cover something else. We were left with 21,000. We were asked, I don't know, maybe 2-3 weeks ago, to transfer $10,000 to another city account. The reason for that, it was appropriate, is that we were running upstairs to the 3rd floor to process many of our outgoing ballots. And we were using that postage meter, and we essentially depleted the postage that the rest of the city offices have access to. So we used $5,000 of their postage during the preliminary, and given that they projected we would use at least another 5,000 for the November election, they asked us to transfer $10,000. So that number that was on the initial budget kept going down and down. We have 2 permits in the Lawrence Postal Service. One is for things that are incoming, and one is for things that we process that are outgoing. One of those permits has no money on it, right? So it needs to be replenished, certainly before we get engaged with doing the city census. And the city census is so tied directly to our elections. The history with getting residents to complete the city census is not great. So we need to look at what we have done in the past, and we need to brainstorm, and we need to explore other best practices in communities to figure out what we can do better. But we can't continue to do what we've always done. So that might mean an additional mailing. It's going to mean doing more, which is going to mean more money in this category. This is also the category where we pay for printing our ballots. So these transfers, again, they're reasonable, and the money is already there in a different area. I'm simply asking that it be allocated to the proper object classes so that we can use it. I mean, some of the other expenses that I would have never thought of, the council voted to put a ballot question on the November 2nd ballot, right? You all discussed that at length. Well, it was presented to us only in English. We are required to put that question on the ballot in Spanish as well. And the city does not have a certified Spanish translator, not in city government, not in the school department. So today I went and contracted for a certified Spanish translator. So these expenses add up. I assure you, we will never run out of toner again on election day. And that's just a lot by way of background to say, I implore you to approve these transfers.
Thank you, Clerk LeBlanc. I'm going to take this moment to share my screen, which is the document, to make sure everyone saw it. What is currently on the screen is what went out earlier today, and I'll let Ms. LeBlanc speak to it, but I believe it identifies all of the transfers correctly. Am I correct, Clerk LeBlanc?
It absolutely does, right? This was the detail that I didn't have when I first came in with my very pithy memo. And you know, this is where I'm asking for the funds to go to. Again, there's no request for additional monies.
Very good. With that, I will open the floor and ask fellow councils if they have questions or anything from Ms. LeBlanc. Counselor Rodriguez.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. Once again, I'm glad that you actually identifying. Clark, thank you so much for doing what you're doing, and especially for helping out so much during the election day. I appreciate to have a transparent and open election for two people to see what we do in the city of Lawrence. Eventually, you know, during your conversation, you mentioned a few things that I'm definitely in favor of or supporting your effort for the future, better budgeting, because that's basically what we're dealing with right here. And I got it. This is not your budget, and probably this is not the way you run elections before. But we definitely understand that there is a process that is not perfect, and we can definitely change it if we all on the same page. Another thing that I was curious when you mentioned, interesting enough. So in the city of Lawrence, we do not have a certified translator from Spanish to English to Spanish, correct?
That's what I was told today, Counselor.
So is that means that we haven't hired anybody as translator, or that if we have anybody that is certified translator, they're not being hired to do those type of duties?
So I can't speak to the citywide situation. I can speak to the city clerk's office, and in particular to the elections division. Again, in the city, just upstairs in the city clerk's office, we have staff members who are truly bilingual, speak English fluently and Spanish fluently, right? So when members of the public come in, they are serviced. If they need to read things in Spanish, they can. We get the job done.
Yeah, I got it.
Right. Downstairs in the elections division, it is the same. And we have a bilingual coordinator. And our staff has, on several occasions, taken a written document and translated it. This is a ballot question. This is something that requires a certified translator. And we do not have that on staff in the city clerk's office.
All right. My next question will be, doesn't it make sense to have our bilingual coordinator to be a certified translator?
Thank you. Thank you for that, Counselor. I certainly intend to pursue. I don't know what is involved in that. I don't know what the costs are, but it is on my very long to-do list of things to explore that grow every day. Our staff on so many levels need development.
Yeah, definitely, I understand.
Yep, absolutely. I agree with you 100%.
And I think that, you know, identifying what you are, but doing what you're doing, we identify what we weak on, and essentially we're a city that is mostly non-English speakers, or perhaps, you know, Spanish. A lot of Spanish people live here in the city of Lawrence. So essentially, I think that it is essential that we have somebody with that type of skills that is certified. We have a lot of qualifying people. I got you.
Absolutely.
Certifying means a lot different, and I think that, you know, we should have that. It is surprising to me that we don't, especially when you mentioned the school department.
Yep. And again, I certainly reached out to them, but it is the city clerk who is responsible for actually putting the question on the ballot. I'm sure if they had one, we would have had access. So just so that you know what the process will be, I should have the translated document back tomorrow morning. And then our city attorney, who is also, you know, very, does very well in this area, is going to, even though it was prepared by a certified interpreter, our city attorney will read the English and read the Spanish just as a double check that we got it 100% right.
All right, no problem. I just want to make sure that we at least cover that up and identify that issue, because it's extremely important that we actually, have that type of capability.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilor Rodriguez. I would now turn to my colleague, Councilor Pavel Payano. Sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Madam Clerk, I just want to thank you for your leadership on this. I think it's great that we're identifying these holes within our department, and hopefully come next year with a new budget, these holes will not exist. I implore you that as you're thinking about what is needed between now and the next election, I think that professional development piece is important, both on the long term, but also on the short term. I know that, there's a lot to do within the election, but it is important that our poll checkers and our wardens are up to date and are informed with the rules. And, regardless of how many times somebody has been a warden or a poll checker, there's always, it's always good to sort of like reinforce, that information. I will say that in the last elections, one of the things that I found a little, upsetting, I would say, is that there were voters that were being turned away by poll workers because they said that they didn't live in the district, and when the voters asked for a provisional ballot, they were told no. And it would take a little bit more push to get them to do that provisional ballot, to the point that even one of our former former residents that used to work at the elections department, he was telling me that something similar occurred to him. And I think, it's just a lack of, sometimes whoever the person is talking, that they're not aware of everything. And I think that the only way for us to resolve things like this, not just for this election, but in future elections, is to ensure that not only do we have the right staff, but that staff is, as trained as possible. But to do that, we have to have the resources for it. Now, a question that I have for you is that you mentioned that we're going to be looking for contracting a temporary agency. If you can talk to me a little bit more about that, what the process is for contracting with that agency. Is that someone that's someone that's suggested by the state? Within this agency, the people that will be working with us, are these folks off the street? What is their level of understanding of the work that they're going to be doing?
Sure. Thank you, Counselor, for those questions. If I could first just speak very briefly to your initial comments. I certainly have taken them all to heart. I have had conversations with our election staff. We have good workers out there who've been working for the city for many years, but the training for clerks and wardens needs to be revamped, and it will be very different between now and the November election. And we will actually be bringing them in much smaller groups and doing more one-on-one. With regard to provisional ballots, they should be rare. If we have people in the office who can answer the phone when they're calling, anybody that they have questions on, really, they ought to be able to, get a good answer and allow that voter to vote and not vote provisional. We had 37 provisional ballots, and only 8 of them were counted. Most of the people actually didn't live in the city of Lawrence, and some of the individuals weren't registered. So we will be reaching out to those people who weren't registered, who thought that they were registered, to make sure that they get registered before the November election. But we are totally looking at doing that differently. And as it relates to the budget, right, you're all familiar with the $20 that, you know, a poll worker or a clerk or a warden gets for coming to training. Well, that's probably going to end up being $20 because if we're calling them in to do one-on-one training and they're with us for an hour and a half to 2 hours, we need to compensate them for that. So to your second piece about what does the contracting process look like? My first step is always to reach out to purchasing. I reached out to Janelvi. She gave me a copy of the state contract that had providers, and she also gave me contact information on one temporary agency that the city has used recently, and they are an approved vendor with the city. As long as the contract has kept just under $10,000, there's not the competitive bid process. These individuals, it's very hard right now to get quality help. I mean, it really is difficult. The state required amount for paying an administrative person, which is the category that these individuals would fall into, it's $17.50 an hour. Well, if the individual is getting $17.50 an hour over a 5-week period, the company is actually paying the individual, but there's a markup of $11, $12, right? And again, we need to do this because our hiring process for a temporary worker takes too long. I will tell you that I have received, so I've reached out to several locations and only got one other to return my call after leaving a very detailed message that we were looking to pay no more than $17.50 an hour. And I still haven't gotten any quote back, but I expect it to be much higher than the vendor that has already been certified by the city. So that particular vendor has actually sent a few resumes, and these are individuals that have telephone skills. They're individuals that have computer skills. They're, you know, in one case, the individual had been an office manager. I've got to go back and look closely. I said, you know, ideally we get 2 people who are truly bilingual. So they're qualified individuals who, for whatever reason, find themselves between jobs, and they're available to us over the next 5 weeks.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. So I would say, I think it'd be important for the sake of transparency with whoever it is that we end up going, that the council is as informed as possible. I think with, transparency, not just in government, but within elections is, super, super key. And I'm sure that the public themselves will want to know, like, who it is that we're hiring from. As you, to your earlier comments, I would agree. I would expect that if we are bringing people in for training, that we are that we are paying them. So I think, like, I'm 100% with you on that. And I think as you're mentioning that one of the difficulties might be paying the poll workers that $17.50 might not be the right. I mean, as I hear it, what I'm hearing is that $17.50 might not be the right amount if we are partnering, if we're getting temporary workers, because that means that those workers are going to be getting less than $17.50 while their counterparts are getting that $17.50, and that creates a certain disparity, between them. I wonder if it's possible to, potentially that the bid could be higher than that.
So I just want to clarify, the 2 individuals that we are bringing on to work in the elections division over the next 5 weeks are not poll workers. Our poll workers would kill for $17.50 an hour. When you divide the stipend that they get of $140 for a poll worker by a 14 or 15 hour day, they are not even getting minimum wage. So the entire, I've looked, I don't believe we have a I've looked, I don't find that the city has a poll worker compensation ordinance, so I don't know how those fees were set, but it's certainly something that we have to take care of and look at for the next time around. With regard to the $17.50 an hour that the individuals who are identified and work for the temporary agency are getting, you know what, we'll see if we can get good people for $17.50, we will. The problem with going over that is we need 2 people in there over the next 5 weeks. I am not in a position to move staff from upstairs to downstairs to help out, which I did this last time. We're short-staffed upstairs and we're creating backlogs beyond what we already have. So if we were to go over $17.50 for these 2 temporary individuals, it would, the contract would exceed the $10,000. And that would make it a completely different procurement process that again would delay, you know, and that wouldn't be good for us.
Understood. Understood. Well, I think at least, you know, one of the positive things about this is that perhaps these are things that we can explore for next year, because I would agree. I think it's important for us to, you know, whoever is coming on board, it's not a volunteer position. It's a job. And if we want to make sure that people are treating it as that and are dedicating their time as a job, then we have to pay right, and anything below minimum wage is, you know, should be below our standards. So, you know, whenever it is, you know, next year that gets brought about, I definitely would love to advocate for that. So, you know, I'll close with just, you know, thank you, give my thanks and appreciation for you and the rest of your staff for the work that you guys have been doing. So thank you. No further questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Payano.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Council Levy.
Okay. So thank you, Diane, for all the work that you've been doing and, you know, everything that you did during this past election. I know that it was a great experience for you at this time, because we've been talking about everything that's been happening. I have a question. So still people are getting the 140, the pool workers, that is what they are getting?
Poll workers are getting $140 plus $20 if they attend the training. Our clerks are getting $180 and our wardens are getting $220.
Okay. So practically it's the same amount that they've been getting for the last almost 10 years.
That is my understanding, Counselor.
Okay, so I think that maybe this is one of the reasons why so many people doesn't want to work during the election time, because the time that they are spending there and all the work that sometimes we have to do right in there. And I think that we need to start looking on the way of how to increase that stipend, because this is a stipend that we're giving to these people. So also another thing is like if those people are getting welfare or they are receiving social security or SSI, it's being deducted from their paychecks when any amount that they receive it from there. So I don't know how we can work on that, because this is not the pay that we're giving, is practically a stipend. And I think that Social Security or SSI should not be taking those amounts from whatever that they get in the monthly basis.
You know, thank you, Counselor. Again, I will certainly explore this after this election so that we get it right for the next election. As I said, I've been looking to see if there is a poll worker compensation ordinance. One of the things I did in a previous position in my hometown community was to actually rewrite a poll worker compensation ordinance for this very reason. And once the new rates were established, to tie increases, annual increases, to make them automatic and tie them to the consumer price index. So I think that there are some good models out there in communities that we can look to. But I would agree, if when you calculate a 14, 15-hour day, we're paying people less than minimum wage, we need to address that.
Yes, absolutely. That is true. That is very truly. So my other question is like all this transfer that you've been doing. So I agree with everything that you've been doing right now, because I know that this is a need on your department and the election department and the clerk, but it will not affect the salary and wage of your department transferred from that item.
I don't understand the question.
My question is like, you are transferring right now 15,000 from salary and wage.
Yeah.
To be used to purchase service. Okay, so everything that you are doing is just transferring from salary and wages.
Right.
It will not affect at the end your, okay.
Thank you for that. No, this has absolutely no impact on any of our employees. As I said, this was money that came to us. I think it probably should have come a while back. And the comptroller explained it was just put in. So no, it doesn't have any negative impact on our staff. To the contrary, it has a positive impact on our staff because they will appreciate the things that we are going to be able to do for them.
No, that is true. I just agree. You know, I agree everything that you've been doing, all of this transfer, but I don't want it then to be affected later, you know, on the wage and salary. So that maybe is another item that maybe we can use it just to buy and to get all of these things. But yes, thank you so much, because it's much better that you do it, everything like we say in-house and going to another office to start making copy or getting in here to doing this and this. So I just prefer to be doing everything in your department than to go anywhere.
Thank you, Counselor.
Thank you too.
Thank you, Counselor Levy. Thank you, Clerk LeBlanc. Are there any other questions, comments? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve and
Motion
send it
to-
to the full council. What's
There's a motion by Counselor Levy to send to the full
Second.
council with a favorable recommendation. It has been properly seconded by Counselor Rodriguez. Is there discussion? Hearing no discussion, I will call the vote. Clerk Halloran, please.
A roll call for document 19921. Councilor Giovanni Rodriguez,
Yes.
Councilor Pavel Payano,
Yes.
Councilor Anna Levy,
yes.
and Chairman David Abdu.
Chair votes yes. Motion passes 4-0. Thank you, Clerk Halloran.
Thank you.
Thank you, counselors.
Thank you, Clerk LeBlanc. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
We'll see you next Tuesday night. And the next item is item number 21521, appropriation transfer from salaries 012111-1510 to professional services account 012111-53,000 in the amount of $117,000 for mental health clinicians, as proposed by Chief Roy Vask. And this evening, we are once again joined by former counselor and current Director of Support Services at the Police Department, Eileen Burnell.
Thank you, Counselor. Council, back in June, when we passed the budget for FY22, there is a line item in our budget for $117,000 for mental health clinicians, which Chief Vask is very strongly in favor of, and you as a council were very receptive and supportive of, and we're grateful for that support. In this particular fiscal year, where we are already into practically October, starting tomorrow, it seems like it will make the most sense, for at least for this fiscal year, to partner with a facility such as like Leahy Health, a facility that is licensed and insured, that has mental health clinicians on staff, and bring those people in to get through this first year, and then make a decision come spring if we want to continue outsourcing that through a facility, or if we want to hire staff in-house. But we are finding that many other departments are using a partner, a professional partner. So it's the same amount of money. We're just moving it, instead of having it as a salary line item, is a professional services line item, so that we can then contract with that partner to provide those mental health clinicians so we can get them on board faster. So that is the basic purpose behind this transfer. The exact same use for those funds, just instead of having them as city employees, they would be outside contractors that we're bringing in, most likely through Leahy Health or another behavioral health specialist in the area. That is the provider that several other area police departments recommend.
Voy con eso.
Excuse me? Oh,
That's okay. I think it was background.
that was me. I apologize. I'm sorry.
Nope, no, you're good.
But anyway, so that is the reason why we're asking for a line item transfer. It's the same funds for the same purpose, just a different way of allocating them.
Thank you, Councilor Brunel. I believe most of us would remember that from June, and I have no questions. Are there questions, concerns, or motions? I see Councilor Rodriguez.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity to speak on this matter. So essentially, I would like to see people being hired for the city of Lawrence and keep our resource here, because they're gonna be here 40 hours a week. And it is more direct and more perhaps effective, we don't know yet, to hire people instead of having professional services or coming to the department. But I mean, to be honest with you, I think it's not late to hire people, because I mean, the budget was passed on June, month 6. We're on month number 10 right now. So we're probably gonna, if we decide to go ahead and hire people, we'll probably be successful starting next year. But I understand probably the need of having a good structure, which basically I hope that this is what we're doing. I don't know. Do you guys have the RFP already?
We do not.
You do not. How long it take you to prepare the RFP on this professional service hiring?
We would work with Janelle V in the purchasing office. It usually takes a week or two to actually draft it, and then there's posting requirements. It's a 30-day posting from the time that it goes up. There's the same, the biggest delay with hiring for a city employee is that this is a new position. So we had been working with the personnel office to draft a job description, and then they would have to create an ordinance. So those things have not been done. So, and we had a gap in the personnel office. So Gina has been amazing, the current acting director of personnel. But with the gap, it just seemed like it made a lot of sense for the first year to hire an outside agency and then take it from there. As far as by next June, we'd be in a much better position to hire internally. I agree with you that a more direct hire may make a lot of sense, especially for mental health issues. They'd be more familiar with the community and the community's needs. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yes, and I understand, and I may understand the need of of the services, but I also understand the need of making sure that we have a good process in place so that we can actually hire somebody. And that's the reason behind asking to see if we can have the RFP in front of us for probably, or not necessarily the RFP, at least a draft, so we can address issues as of what we're going forward for the future. If we are hiring professional services, that is going to provide the service the people need, as well as having a structure in place or develop that structure for the future hiring. I think it will be a win-win situation, since we don't know what we're dealing with, but we also don't know what is the qualifications that somebody probably needs, or perhaps what is the structure that somebody's going to come over on board, because we don't have that structure. So I encourage you to have at least those points on the RFP as of developing the structure of our program, but as well providing the services that people need, the professional services, and that the clinicians are going to provide to the community, because both are as important as one another. Because I mean, we need those professional services, and we need a structure to be able to maintain those services and not having that program to fail, not setting up that program to fail in the future. So that's why I was wondering to see if we have the RFP, because I would like to see that type of request on the RFP as of developing the structure we need in the city of Lawrence to have a successful program for the future.
I don't know if we would have an RFP by Tuesday, but I do know that we have some materials we could get in front of you before Tuesday as far as the structure that we envision and where we would want it to fall. So, but we can work to get you as close to an RFP as we can by Tuesday. But I don't.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm not the person that produces that, so I don't want to promise someone else's. You know, I don't know.
No, I understand.
Yeah.
I mean, it's close for Tuesday to have an RFP, especially when you don't have anything. And you're gonna go from 0 to 100. No, I'm not expecting that, but at least I wanted to see like some type of
Sure.
promised language that is going to be on the RFP, or draft language, or draft RFP perhaps, that is going to be close to what we're looking for, including that type of language that is going to ensure we actually have a good program in the future.
Sure. And just so you know, Counselor, we do have a program here that where we envision where this would go. Like, we have created a crisis intervention team. We have a captain that heads that. We have the domestic violence unit that's part of that. We have other pieces in place that we can see this being a very natural fit. We have our opioid intervention stuff that would, again, go right with this. So this would all fall together. We definitely do have a vision of exactly where we would want this to go. And the chief has worked hard with one of our captains to really flesh out this program. So in that sense, there's nothing there. You know, I mean, there is a nice basis there. We have worked with a few of the departments to see exactly what they have their mental health clinicians doing. So we have the guidelines in place, so we can put that together relatively quickly. But again, I don't know if it will be by Tuesday, but I understand exactly what you want, and we will get something in front of you that gives you some good outline so you can see what we're talking about.
Thank you.
You got it.
Thank you, Councilor Rodriguez. I see Councilor Payano's hand is up. Councilor, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So what I would say, I think I agree, Councilor Rodriguez, with, you know, so like the overall message, you know, I think normally I would rather have a permanent employee than having, you know, a temporary or someone that is not necessarily employed by the city, but we're sort of a third partner. I think in this particular case, I wonder, having never sort of hired therapists before and never had to provide for a department of therapists, because I think that in itself, there's added costs to that. And I think one of the things that when the police department first sort of brought this idea forth, while I definitely agreed with the idea, I was wondering how exactly we would sort of establish this, especially since we don't have a history of doing, you know, something like that. I think that this is an opportunity for us to see how it goes by, you know, having a third party. Just because we might be partnering up with Leahy, that might not prohibit us from sort of pushing that the individuals that they do send to us are individuals that know our community or have experience in communities similar to ours. I think that piece is super important, especially if you are planning on providing therapeutic services to whether folks that are working for LPD or outside of it. Understanding the community is extremely important. I think that we might be able to do that with Leahy Clinic. If I think the department judges that this like that this process makes the most sense for next year, then I would definitely be in support of it. Since I'm not on the ground, and I think the chief and yourself probably have a better idea of how this project will move forward, and whether this third party, the individuals that we're interacting with are the right individuals, or whether we need to sort of, get in there and ensure that we have full control over the people that are working for us, and we have full control over the professional development and processes. So I think that this is would be sort of a key experiment to see how things go, and how LPD sort of evaluates the project moving forward. But I want to sort of give thanks to the folks that decided to go this route, because I think that this is a very could be really, really great for LPD. I think, one of the things that a lot of individuals don't understand is that our officers are seeing, society, at times not at its best. They're seeing deaths, they're seeing overdoses, they're seeing a lot of violence. And no human being can go through all that on a constant basis, without having to worry about their mental health. So I think that this is kudos to the department for going in that direction, because I think that this could provide support, not just for staff, but for other individuals that come to LPS, that come to LPS, like the victims as well. Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Payano. I would note that, Councilor Levy, did you have any questions or items, issues? No? Hearing none.
No.
I would like to at this time recognize Council President Mark LaPlante, who has joined us to speak on this item. Mr. LaPlante, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and for this opportunity. I want to associate myself with the comment of the previous speakers. I couldn't agree more on exactly what we're looking at as a police department, especially in the national debate regarding policing, and trying to see what impacts using these mental health conditions can do to provide and augment the police responsibilities and missions. So I wholeheartedly agree with that, and I applaud the police department as well for putting the toe in the water and seeing what kind of positive impact this can, and give it a shot and see what happens. And maybe this is a very good thing. Maybe we can build on it, or maybe we'll evaluate it. It may be, we may need to tweak it. So let's see where this goes. Regarding the mental health clinicians, it's my in the professional reading and outside reading that I do, and information sources that I receive, I'm led to believe that there is a tremendous shortage of mental health clinicians, mental health sources of assistance throughout the nation. We're being hit hard at a lot of different levels through COVID, with people being at homes, whether it's for younger age children, adults, all across the spectrum. We're facing some tremendous challenges and trying to get people with that skill set to provide assistance to people all across our country. And I'm just curious, the debate here is, what are we going to do it in-house in the city, or we're going to go through going through Leahy Clinic? And I think the decision by the police department is, let's contract this out to the Leahy Clinic and bring that in. What kind of assurances do we have that they're going to be able to provide and have the horsepower at that facility? I know it's pretty robust, I'm guessing, but I just want to hear, will they be able to provide what we need to see what kind of impact they can make in our city?
Council, we've had very preliminary conversations with them because we haven't had financing to go into a more formal conversation with them. But they, have presented us with their standard guidelines, and the paperwork we've been looking at, it was like 1 1/2 full-time persons that would be working with us. And that would be someone who's dedicated to Lawrence. It's not like whoever's on call is coming up to Lawrence on a as needed basis. It's a person that would be dedicated to the city. And that is what the other departments around us that we've been working with to get quotes and get ideas and models are doing as well. You know, say it's November 1 and we're ready to sign a contract with them and have someone signed up. Will they have someone on staff ready to do that? From everything I've been hearing from them, it's my understanding that they would. They have not indicated to us in any way that they think they're going to have some kind of shortage. But that's a great question and something that we will definitely keep in mind as we proceed with them forward, that we are looking for a solid commitment. Because during our initial conversations, there has not been anything indicating that they thought they couldn't staff this.
When we're looking at staffing this position, is this a 24/7? So this person or people are going to be around the clock able to assist as first responders at any time, or is this we're bringing them in Monday through Friday, normal business hours kind of thing?
It would more likely than not be two persons. One would be like on the 9 to 5 shift, and one would be on the 5 to 1 shift. One would be the lead, and one would be the associate. And so we would not have 24-hour coverage. And then if something happens on the overnight shift, if there's a true need, then we'd have to call someone in, or we would have to do follow-up in the morning, which is sometimes what happens with other situations now. We make a referral, get situations stabilized, and then make a referral in the morning. But with 2 people, you can't have 24/7 coverage. You would need at least 4 people. You would need to have one for every shift, and then somebody to cover weekends and whatever else, you know what I mean? So if you're going to go 9 to 5, I mean, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, you're going to need more than 2 people to do that. That's just not possible with 2 people.
And who I do want to follow up outside of this spectrum to the police chief, or perhaps even the captain you said who is involved in this. So who's the lead official on this task? Is it a task force? What did you call it before?
We are creating a crisis intervention team.
Okay.
Yep.
So
currently that is, at the moment, that is headed by Captain Aguilar.
This is one of those things, and I think even a couple of the speakers ago wants to get some sort of report. This is fascinating to me because public safety is always going to be important in our city. It has been in the past, and it will be now, and it will be in the future. It's not going away. And to see what ways we can figure out and it's a puzzle, and these are the pieces that are going to make the puzzle clearer. I do want to get a sense, at least in the initial phases of this, is how things are progressing. And I believe this is probably going to be in the chief's as a quarterly reports that he submits. So I hope there's a segment of that report where we could kind of measure and see how any kind of progress is made and what kind of response we've been getting on it. So I'm throwing that as a plug, by the way. Pardon
me? Right now, what we have in crisis intervention is the opioid and the domestic violence. We don't have a true mental health piece of it. They're there for very specific causes. They're there for opioid intervention, and they're there for domestic violence situations. So when you saying you want to see progress, this is brand new. So I just want to be realistic with expectations, but
no, well, my expectations we're going to see progress. We're putting 117,000, so I want to see some. Those are taxpayer dollars, and I want to see the needle moved. I'm not sure how far it's going to move, but I want to see the needle move. But that's part of the question.
As soon as we hire someone, we'll move the needle.
Yes, and if it's not working at all, let's dump the program or let's tweak it. I mean, we got to figure out if this is working. Essentially, like any other program we were looking at, if it's working, let's continue doing it. If it's not working, let's evaluate it and make some determinations. Anyway, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I look forward to engaging and learning more about this process and this particular element of the police department. And I appreciate the time. Thanks.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you, President LaPlante. Thank you, Ms. Burnell. Are there any other comments or questions or motions?
Motion to send it to the full council with favor recommendation.
So move.
There's a motion by my colleague, Mr. Payano, seconded by Ms. Levy. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Clerk Halloran, please take the roll.
A roll call for document 21521. Counselor Anna Levy,
Yes.
Counselor Giovanni Rodriguez,
Yes.
Counselor Pavel Pagano,
Yes.
and Chairman David Abdu.
Chair votes yes, motion passes 4-0.
Thank you very much, council. Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Rodriguez,
can I get a motion to take item 15221?
there's a motion to take 15221 off the table. Is there a second?
Yes.
And it's been properly seconded by Mr. Piano. Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, motion to take.
Discussion.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, can you just can you read the heading for the document as well?
Yes,
For
sir.
those of us at home.
Tabled item number 15221, order to expend grant funds, coronavirus local fiscal recovery funds, CLFRF, in the amount of $57,351,845 as submitted by Mark Ianello, Chief Administrative and Finance Officer. That is what the motion is on to take off the table. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. Ms. Halloran, take the roll, please.
A roll call for document 15221 that was taken out of table matters. Counselor Anna Levy,
No.
Counselor Pavel Pagano,
Yes.
Counselor Giovanni Rodriguez,
Yes.
and Chairman David Abdu.
Chair votes yes. Motion passes 3-1. This
Thank you.
item is now off the table. Who has questions? Mr. Rodriguez.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak on this item. This is the first time that I actually have the opportunity to address this, and I appreciate the college that actually are willing to discuss this important topic. So today we received an information in regard to this item. It was late. It was recognized that it was late, and we definitely appreciate the information here. My intention is to go through the information, even though we probably doesn't have the opportunity yet to discuss it. But at least we expand the opportunity to Juan Pablo Jaramillo, which is our chief of staff, the chief of staff of the mayor, to be able to discuss this, not discuss it, but at least read it and be able to present it officially to the committee. That way we can eventually, once we have the time, discuss it if the committee prefer. So I expand my opportunity to Juan Jaramillo to discuss this, or probably read through.
Very good. Thank you. We've been joined this evening by the Mayor's Chief of Staff, Mr. Juan Jaramillo. Mr. Jaramillo, if you would, please introduce yourself and provide your name and address for the record. And
good evening, Mr. Chairman. Thanks to you and through you to the members. Juan Pablo Jaramillo, 382 Ocean Avenue, Revere, Massachusetts, apartment 501. Thank you through you, Mr. Chairman, to Vice Chair Rodriguez for bringing this important item up. As a response to the economic and public health crisis caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, the U.S. Congress introduced and passed earlier this year a $1.9 trillion bill seeking to give states and local municipalities recovery in their money for recovery from the pandemic. Of that $1.9 trillion, the Commonwealth received about $42 billion, of which the city of Lawrence has received $57 million. Sorry, $46 billion the state received. The intent of the legislation, as I understand it, is to expend this money as quickly as possible. The Congress is concerned about the long-term effects of COVID and the effects that it has had in our infrastructure. It also takes into account the long-term gaps and disparities in communities in qualified census tracts, as is the city of Lawrence, in an attempt to invest in our public health infrastructure and economic development. They have passed this bill, and the city again received $56 million. And we're getting asked to spend it relatively quickly. It's a lot of money, but they are asking us to spend it relatively quickly. We are being asked to report on the funding quarterly. In addition to that, we have to essentially commit the money or appropriate the money by 2024, and they're asking us to spend all the money by 2026. So that's about 4 years to spend all this cash. The Department of Treasury, who's the one who's overseeing this money, has set out a set of guidelines. Now, I'm not sure if all the members of the committee have gotten the guidelines, but I can certainly share a copy of those guidelines. In addition to that, our office has been working with the city attorney to get just a summarized version of those guidelines, which I can also share. But taking into account the guidance from the Department of Treasury, and in accordance with that guidance, the Mayor Vasquez has begun to commit some of these funds. Now, additional state guidance has asked us to put it through the council, which is why it's in your committee today. But I wanted to go over some of the things that the mayor is thinking of spending this money on. And I want to be very clear that this is a lot of money we're getting asked to spend relatively quickly, and we're still in the middle of the pandemic. So not all of it has been committed per the document that I've shared with you today, but I'll share some of the things that are here, all the things that are here. So the first foremost, the city of Lawrence had a child care program that began last year under Mayor Rivera's leadership. That child care program left a lot of families behind, unfortunately. While it was good, left a lot of families behind. And what we've been hearing from business owners and families alike is that they're having a hard time going to work or staying at work because they can't find affordable childcare so that they can stay at work. So sometimes it's even cheaper for them to stay at home than to go to work because childcare is far and few between and also very expensive and unattainable, prohibitive in cost. So the mayor is expanding that program to, we spent a little over $1 million in the year since it got instituted. We're expanding that program to include people in the cliff, if you will, people that have been left out by the program because of income. And we're expanding to a 2-year program, $3.6 million. We also have identified at least 2 sites that are contaminated throughout the city. Obviously, the interim guidance talks at length about public health disparities that affect health outcomes for communities like ours, which are in qualified census tracts, which most of the city of Lawrence is. Contamination is one of those disparities that has been identified time after time by public health officials as a determinant of health outcome. And therefore, we're looking to address these problem sites with some of this money. The mayor has allocated $1.2 million to that effect. The interim guidance also speaks at length about the disparities in access to broadband and internet. When folks went into the pandemic and young people began studying from home, communities in qualified census tracts like ours found a particular difficulty accessing the necessary Wi-Fi and sometimes even the technological infrastructure to be able to allow their children to attend school while social distancing. So we addressed that with a $5 million investment in broadband access expansion. As we know, the city of Lawrence has been not through one, but two major catastrophes. The first one being obviously the explosion in 2017. And then we were one of the hardest hit cities by the pandemic in the last year and a half or so. And the brunt of the work of serving folks in our community who are vulnerable has fallen on the senior center. And it has damaged our infrastructure, our building, our floors, our bathrooms there. And so the mayor is allocating some money to continue to repair that that space, which, as we know, has come to serve so many of our residents in the times it most needed it. The next item is we are looking to expand. So let me go right back to that item. The interim guidance talks at length about expenses incurred because of the pandemic, and obviously the damaging of our buildings was that one of those expenses incurred. So $2 million for that. The next item is infrastructure for water and sewer. So as a public health measure, the interim guidance has identified proper water and sewer infrastructure as an important part of ensuring that we tackle not just this pandemic, but any public health crisis moving forward. So we've been working with the city's water department to identify future projects that we might have to take out loans for. And instead of paying those projects with the loans and further burdening the ratepayer or the taxpayer, we're looking to invest $19 million in those projects to alleviate the possibility of taking out loans. Further, the interim guidance has talked about communities like ours in qualified census tracts. One of the particular determinants of health that affected us is that we are overcrowded, and oftentimes we have a lot of people living in homes together, large families, and that led to particular outbreaks of the COVID-19 pandemic. And so we know from data provided by Mass Housing and other pro-housing organizations around the Commonwealth that one of the best ways to kind of relieve that problem is to increase accessibility for affordable housing and home ownership opportunities. The mayor is recommending $1 million to expand those programs. The next item is in an effort, again, we know that public health outcomes, and we know that comorbidities, including the lack of access to walkable streets, has affected outcomes as a result of COVID-19. This, in addition to trying to address that by increasing walkable streets, looks to make an investment in our business districts. That's $4.5 million, $4.596 million, so $4.6 million almost to address those concerns. As an environmental justice community, again, which affects our public health outcomes, we are allocating some money for climate change and sustainability initiatives, everything from HVAC to ensuring that, again, we're addressing the effects of climate change. And then $1.6 million to pay off some of the expenses that we have incurred just by virtue of dealing with the pandemic, from testing to vaccinating. As you know, the mayor has been aggressive in his approach to vaccinate as many of our residents as possible. And while we hope that we can cover most of that, those expenses through other funding sources, we created a little cushion here, or the mayor created a little cushion here to ensure that we can continue to do, we can make sure that we can pay all our expenses through ARPA money, and we don't have to tap into any other city reserves. The total committed funds is $46 million. Now, I understand that we got a little over $57 million in this funding. And so the mayor, in foresight of what could happen, because who knows what the long-term effect of the pandemic could be, is reserving about $10 million, which he will kind of try to expend in the next 2 years, or allocate or commit, if you will, in the next 2 years, just to make sure that he can address any unforeseen long-term effects of COVID that we are not seeing while we're still in the middle of the pandemic. So again, I thank you for your time, and I'll stick around for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Marino. Mr. Rodriguez?
Yes, thank you so much. I would like to ask Jaramillo, so if we go ahead and decide to, I mean, what is the timeline that we have to spend this money?
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, so we have to do quarterly reporting on the commitment of the funds. So what we've committed, what we've expended. We actually, and I believe the Chief Administrative Finance Officer is here, but I did cover this at the beginning. We are asked to, at the very least, commit the funds by 2024 and to expend them by 2026. So that is the general timeline, but we do have to do quarterly reporting on this money.
So the quarterly report for this next quarterly report would look like we haven't approved the money, right?
Correct. Well, that we haven't, that we haven't committed it. As I understand it from the Chief Finance and Administrative Officer, Mr. Iannello, yeah, it would be that we just haven't done anything with the money.
Okay. And let me ask you, if we go ahead and approve this money, let's say perhaps in the next 10-15 days, what is going to be the next, when is going to be the closest day so we're going to spend one penny out of that commitment? Or
yeah, so
the RFP process and everything, how long that's going to take?
Yeah, so essentially, it could take up to 2 years, right? And that's why we're kind of getting ahead of this early, because if we drag this out, we might run the risk of running out of time to actually spend this money, because we have to go through RFP processes. We have to fully do, for some of these things, we have to do feasibility studies, etc. And so but we need to actually expend the money by a hard date. And if we don't do that, I don't want to speak out of school here. I think Mr. Iannello might be better fit to answer what happens if we don't do that by a certain date. But we are asked to expend this money and in a fairly quick amount of time, and therefore we're trying to get ahead of the curve here by ensuring that we get it through the committee, at least a good substantial amount of it through the committee. What I can tell you is that the mayor has already, for the childcare program, for example, because it was a previous contract that we just extended, we don't necessarily need to go our RFP again, because it was just a contract amendment that we made. And so therefore, and those payments will begin to be had, I believe, I think they're once a month or once every 3 months. So fairly quickly, at least those payments will have to come online.
And that was the payment that was committed for previous program
for the childcare program
and expanding licensed childcare for families
Correct.
that are not necessarily being approved by a voucher or something.
Correct.
So and my question would be more like, if we get it approved for the next 10 days, the commitment other than the childcare won't happen for the next 3-4 months, right?
Yeah, or even longer, right? For some of these things, I imagine feasibility studies could take a lot longer than 3-4 months, and therefore, but I mean, I don't know how the finance chief feels, but I would feel wary about commissioning a study feasibility for any of these other things without having the money approved.
No, definitely. Yeah, I just want to make sure that at least we know that even though if we approve it today, the effect of the benefit of the money is not going to come to the city of Lawrence instantly. It's going to take some time.
Sure. Yep.
Well, I'm glad that at least I have the opportunity to read through. I have the document in front of me and see the commitment that we have for the city of Lawrence, which a lot of those commitment are very important, especially the one I was very curious to see how we're going to invest $19 million on our water and sewer infrastructure, which is going to definitely benefit the account of the water and sewer account, which is going to be directly and a benefit of the resident, since we have to face soon rather than later an increase on the water and sewer bill. And I'm assuming that by having this $19 million investment, instead of having a greater increasement, will be probably lower. That I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I hope that I'm not.
Yeah, I don't know if the CAFO would like to speak to that, but that is a possibility.
Yeah, no, that's the intention. Is we do have a lot of projects in the water sewer, and they will need to, and this will certainly help if we can use some of this ARPA funds instead of asking the ratepayers to pay for those improvements.
Yeah, and it is important that we actually talk about that, especially now that we're going to do, if we actually get it passed, we're going to do a $19 million investment on that account, because we definitely need to talk about a couple of the rules that are affecting the resident, perhaps, and I'm referring straight up to Rule 12 on the back of our bill, that is making, is making responsible the homeowners for a sewer line that goes from the main line to the actual basement of the property. And that's need to be revised since we're going to make such a good investment. We have at least, or everybody have the experience, council have the experience of having a constituents call because they facing a sinkhole in the front of their house, and essentially they need to open up the main line, not the main line, but the sewer line coming from their property, and all of a sudden they have to invest, and they need to spend $15,000, $16,000, $14,000 out of their pocket to be able to fix that problem. So having this type of investment open up the opportunity to discuss what is affecting the constituents, as well as having the opportunity to improve this type of issue that we usually don't discuss, because it's all about money. So if we don't have the money to spend, it is difficult to have those type of discussion. But having this type of investment of $19 million extra to that account, we can definitely discuss this type of situation that people are facing up there.
Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez.
Thank you.
Mr. Payano, I see your hand.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Mr. Harmon, so thank you for the information that you're giving. I think that there's, essentially, I think you're here today to request us to try to move it forward. I'll say that with anything, especially when we're dealing with money and we're dealing with the public's money, I am not accustomed to voting on something without having the opportunity of more than a few hours of reading through. It sounds like you've provided um, a document. Hopefully, it's a thorough document. As of this morning, I had not seen it, but I'll look through and see if I see it again. I myself wouldn't be able to vote on a measure that I'm not informed of. If this, I don't know how the committee will vote. If this is at the committee level next time, I'm more than happy to ask questions then or in between that. I do have, even though I'm not seeing the numbers in front of me, you mentioned something about money that is is being allocated for child services. So it's my understanding. I did read in the paper that there was going to be $1 million something dollars that was allocated to that. So is this request on top of that 1 million, or is it the same million that was announced more than a month ago?
Uh, um, Thank you, Counselor, for the question. So the total amount is actually 3.6 million. And no, this is not in addition to that. The current expense on that childcare program that we are currently paid for is, and this is 3.6 million over 2 years. Let me be clear. The current expense that we've had for that is a little over $1 million just for the 1 year in service for that. I also want to be very clear that I do not expect the committee, and we're not asking the committee to take this up for a vote today. I shared this today just because I figured it was and I realize this is very late for today's meeting, and we're certainly not expecting that it be taken up today. So I hear you loud and clear on that end, that you would like some more time to review this, and I appreciate your thoughtfulness and thoroughness on this. But no, the short answer to your question is no, this is not in addition to monies that are already being allocated for the child care program.
So I will, and thank you, Mr. Harmon, for that answer. I would say that it's, I find it, highly irregular that the administration, essentially months ago, has mentioned, and essentially I was under the impression that these funds were allocated already, and now I'm, beginning to understand that we are getting to the process where you're asking the city council to commit those funds. I think that the proper way of doing things, which we, spoke in length about at a previous meeting here when this motion was first brought to us, is that we should, proper procedure is to have the debate, have the conversation within the council, right? And have the council involved and support those measures instead of, it sounds like we are essentially the city made a promise to the city, to its residents, and made a promise to this group. I'm hearing that a contract has already been signed, but the money has yet to be allocated. I hope that some of these other measures that you're speaking on are also not measures that the city has already decided to move forward, and we're essentially rubber stamping decisions that were already made. And I think that it is important. Like, that is not what I think our role is. I think our roles are to ensure that we're making informed decisions and ensure that the peoples are being represented in that decision making. So I'll leave it there. I'm sure I'll have several questions once I've been able to fully research the document that you sent in. And I appreciate the fact that, you guys have taken the time these last several weeks to come together and bring us a proposal that we can actually talk about instead of, sort of this big figure and us, talking in broad strokes what it could be used for. So thank you for your time, Mr. Chair. I have no further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Payano. Are there further questions?
Mr. Chair, please.
Council Levy?
Thank you for the opportunity tonight. Thank you, Mr. President. And yes, for the same reason that Mr. Payano stated at this moment. So I was taking like some notes regarding the child care and all of this kind of thing. I will not be able to also to approve this tonight. So it's like also we receive all of this information very late, and we would like to get more deeply on this, because I think that's $56 million is a lot of money, and we have to be very careful how we spend it. It has to be very clear and transparent, when we deal with this amount of money and how we're going to allocate this. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Levy. I would acknowledge Council President LaPlante. President
Thank you,
LaPlante.
Mr. Chairman. Through you to Mr. Ryanello. I just want to get a little more clarity on the time frame of when we need to make a decision, when the money needs to be spent. I'm unclear as to, I'm hearing these words, we got to move on this quickly, but I'm not sure what quickly means. I heard 2024 and then 2026. And can you just put a little more detail to that?
Yeah, let me, I was in front of the council at the end of July and put this on the agenda. And as I mentioned back then, this is, it's a large, the Department of Revenue considers these grant funds, even though I'm not quite sure they're a grant. I think they're more of an allocation, but anyway, the Department of Revenue had a ruling that these are considered grant funds and therefore are subject to Chapter 44, Section 53, where we have to, the city can accept the grant funds. And we have received, by the way, cash of approximately $27 million. We have that. The federal government advanced that money in their hopes of trying to get this money out the door quickly to be used on the pandemic and the impacts of the pandemic. So in March, when the Congress passed this legislation, they put together in May some interim final rule is what it's called. The U.S. Treasury put out an interim final rule explaining what you can spend it on. And so they have there are quite limitations on what we can spend it. But part of that interim final rule also had some reporting requirements and then deadlines on what period of expenditure is covered. So I believe it's my note exact date in front of me, but on or about I think it's March 31 of expenses from March 31 of 21 through 12/31/2024 qualify for these use of these ARPA funds. And as Juan mentioned a moment ago, the requirement by the federal government is to at least commit it, because obviously these water sewer projects that we just mentioned, those take a long time to not only prepare, but also actually do the construction, putting it out to bid, doing design, finding contractors and so on. So they recognize that we may not be able to expend $57 million by 2024, but they do want it expended by 12/31/2026. But they'd like to see it all committed by 2024. So our normal process for grants, and you guys just approved a few grants tonight. We generally, the city accepts the grants. It's the department head cannot expend these funds without city council approval. So we generally come to the council, hey, we got a grant for, XYZ or Noxaline, or however you pronounce it, and we're going to spend it on that on Noxaline services. It's the same thing here. We got a grant for ARPA approved expenditures, and we're going to spend it on ARPA approved expenditures. So we comply with the grant. I think the council asked for some more clarity, as Councilor Proiano just mentioned, more clarity as to, well, what specifically are we going to spend it on? And that's what Juan just presented to the council tonight. These are the mayor's vision of approximately 46 million and how he would like to see this first 46 million expended, again, in compliance with the U.S. Treasury guidelines, and also to best negate the impacts of COVID-19. So I think that's where we stand. You know, I know this is a little unusual in the sense that it's 57 million, but normally the council departments come to the council every week with certain grants, $1 million here, $1 million there, and the department head answers a few questions and it usually gets approved. This is 57 million, so I understand there's got to be a lot more questions, and appropriately so. So we're just here to answer them as they come up.
Thank you, Mr. Ryan. Oh, go ahead, Mr. LaPlante.
Oh, thanks, Mr. Chairman. So through you, Mr. Chairman, I think that one of our members here has some documentation about where that money is being spent. Let me just share the request that we all get a copy of that, not only the budget committee, but across all the city councilors. So we're all singing off the same hymnal. So we all know what this is. 57 million. It's a lot of money, and we're being asked to move expeditiously, apparently. Although I would, after listening to Mr. Reinello, I'm not sure the urgency is as acute as it may have been presented. We do have some time. We have to spend the money by the end of 26. That's a while from now. We need to have commitments by a certain time period, but obviously prior to that, to think that we need to get something done in the next month or two. It seems to me as though we could probably give it some depth, some more consideration, some more input, so that we can be a better partner as we go through this process for its massive expenditures. And while there are some similarities to other grant monies that are coming in, it is rare that we get the $1 million or more. The grants are 5,000, 10,000. We do get some in the millions. There's no doubt about that. But this is unheard of money. I mean, this is so much money that many communities are having a hard time trying to figure out where they're spending the money on. It's not that we asked for this money. This is a formula that we've been given this money like any other community. The 57 million, just out of curiosity, are the schools departments also getting additional monies beyond that 57 million? Mr. Reinello, for you, Mr. Chairman.
This is the city share. It's my understanding the school is eligible for some funding as well, but I'm not, I haven't heard from the school department on that yet.
So we're looking at 57, and if we're looking at the city as a total, I mean, we're not in a silo here, although sometimes we think we are. Where it's a big city and we've got a lot of money going all across the place. And it's probably other entities as well, maybe transportation, I'm presuming maybe getting some as well. There's a lot of money coming in, and our piece of the pie is 57 million. So I just want to, at this point, I would encourage us to be more, not that we're not being thoughtful, but I think we need to be more involved in the discussion on this. And maybe we can tap the brakes a little bit as we get more involved. And I do, I can't vote, I'm not voting, but I do share the councilors' request to review this information and be more, and to review it and then again, be more greater partners in this. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome, Mr. LaPlante. And I would note for the record that, because I don't believe he was appropriately identified, Mr. Mark Iannello, our Chief Administrative and Financial Officer, has been answering the questions the last 20 minutes from the last two councilors. Are there other questions? Is there
Motion to table.
motion to table has been made? Is there a second?
Second,
Oh, and there is the second. There is no discussion. Clerk Halloran, please take the roll call.
Okay, roll call for document 15221 that was tabled. Counselor Anna Levy,
Yes.
Counselor Pavel Payano,
Yes.
Counselor Giovanni Rodriguez, Counselor Giovanni Rodriguez,
Yes.
thank you, and Chairman David Abdu.
And the chair votes yes. The vote passes. The motion is tabled. The item is tabled.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Are there any other tabled matters that any counselor would like to entertain at this time?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
There is a motion to adjourn. It has been properly seconded. I would note that the city planner, Pedro Soto, is here. I'm not certain as to why. It may be a table matter. Before I call the vote, does anyone want to?
I will remove my motion.
Councilor Payano has removed it, is withdrawn his motion. Little unorthodox. Hopefully Mr. LaPlante's not listening as our parliamentarian of sorts. Mr. Soto, what item are you here for this evening?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm here for 159/21, the acceptance of funds in the amount of 178,980. I understand that this item is tabled. I think there was an administrative error, I suppose, where this item, there was an amendment that I made last week, I believe it was. So I believed, or 2 weeks ago, perhaps, on the 3rd of September.
Okay.
But I thought it would be on the regular agenda, but it is not. So my apologies on that front.
It's on the agenda, but it was tabled approximately 4 weeks ago.
Yes, that's the issue. But
Is there? And so, Mr. Soto, it cannot be entertained unless a member makes a motion to. And I would ask at this time if there's any council that would like to take 159/21 off the table. Hearing none. So, Mr. Soto, it will remain there for the time being. It remains on the table for the failure of a motion, and we'll be seeing you soon, I suppose. Are there any motions by any counselors?
Motion to adjourn.
There's a motion by Council Levy to adjourn. Is it seconded?
Second.
It has been properly seconded. I would ask Clerk Halloran to take the roll call, please.
A roll call to adjourn at 9 p.m. Counselor Pavel Payano,
Yes.
Counselor Anna Levy,
Yes.
Counselor Giovanni Rodriguez, Counselor Giovanni Rodriguez,
I don't see him on the list of participants.
okay, Chairman David Abdu.
Chair votes yes. Vote passes 3 in the affirmative, none in the negative. We are adjourned. And I want to thank you, Maria, for your assistance this evening, and
Thank
John Mejia behind the scenes, and my colleagues. Thank you to everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Good
You as
night.
well. Good night.
Good night. Bye.
Good night. Bye.